I'm going to read for you a poem that I wrote. It is a beat poem, that's Beat, in the style of Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg. You may or may not know who they are, but if you know a little bit about history and the history of poetry and writing, you certainly know them. Anyway, here's the way it goes. I'm thinking of the good old days when I lived a while in big old Kansas City, Mo. Yeah, it was a hot place to go. I remember the nights at the Colony Club on Troost. 3326 Troost it was. All the people, the guys and dolls, the gays, the queens, the fun, the dancing, the raids. And there was Jimmy G. He was the owner and bartender, a nice-looking older guy. Every night he'd pour a shot of Johnny Walker Red and head to the back room for a private game of nug-a-nug. Then he'd go to the John and disinfect his muff and boot with booze. Everyone knew it, but no one cared. It was a private thing, and private things are private. I lived at the St. Regis on Linwood near the Paseo. It was within walking distance to all the hot places we loved. We young people, full of life, ready for anything, meeting all sorts of people and making friends so easily. It was the 60s, it was jazz, R&B, and the greatest music ever made for the ear. The music, oh, it was so cool, ba-boom, boom, cool. Misty Blue is on the box at the Colony. Dorothy Moore sang it, and it was so sexy and cool. When the music started, everyone let out a scream. We got down, down with the sound, feet to the beat. We were thin and trim and looking fine. It was all good in that time. Ah, youth, what a great time. You ain't too bright, but you sure as hell have a good time in your ignorance. One of my roommates was a queen. He liked boys and girls both. Last time I saw him, decades later, I said, "Hey, princess." That was what we called him back then. He didn't want to be called that now, though. He's a psychiatrist now. Very respectable. He's still meeting young boys in bars, but making and raking in the money as a doctor of the mind. Oh, well, doodah. We were people from all sorts of families, middle class mostly. Parents with money, but we weren't into money. Just wanted to have fun and rebel against what? Well, most anything. The war was handy. The government was better, but club crawling was what we did best. After the Colony Club, we'd hoof it down to the Jewel Box Lounge at 3223 Troost. We watched the drags show starring Ray Bourbon, the top queen around. Known all over the country. A lot of straight men came in. They loved drag shows. You see all sides of people in places like that. They were from the rich side of town and brought in lots of money, and the clubs loved it. They were from nice houses, nice neighborhoods, executive jobs, but sometimes they liked to kick up their heels, and Troost was the street to do that. We walked out into the night. There must have been 5 of us. The air was clean, the night dark, the sky full of stars and a big round moon, the city buildings standing tall against the horizon. Laughter from inside the clubs and around corners. A car horn every once in a while. Lights bright in the Cat's drugstore on the corner of the Paseo. We got in a taxi for our next stop, the rail room. It was across from the Union Station. It was a bit more quiet, but nice. Big Barb was the bouncer. If someone thought they'd cause a bit of trouble, Big Barb, with her 200 pounds, would flail her arms out like a big bird and push her big front onto their body and walk them out the door, backwards. Didn't matter if it was a man or a woman. No one messed with Big Barb. Late at night, 2 guys in suits would often come in. You knew who they were and why they were there. They were the boys who did the jobs for the KC mob. They were looking for someone. Everyone was quiet, not looking at them. If they didn't find the poor fool, they'd go to the next bar. Someone would wind up in the river before the night was over. Quiet as it's kept. The mob owned a lot of gay bars in Kansas City and in other big cities. Kansas City Mo after dark in the 60s. Yeah, it was the coolest place to spend a bit of time in your youth and have one hell of a good time. If you were young and ready to do anything and be anything, KC was the place to be, and the 60s were the time to be there. We all grew up soon enough, and the 60s were long behind us. But the memories, oh, those memories, they remain. It was one big grand adventure. Now it's just a memory. Each generation and each person has a special place and a special time. It's just a moment in a lifetime, but it lives forever in your memory. It's up to the poet to write it for history. So it's last call, lights out. And those of us who shared that time and that space in the 60s must tell it now, before we're gone.